Hi, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order, and I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing after that for a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Turn this off. All right. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the December 14th, 2021 meeting and the agenda of the January 11th, 2022 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. Before we move into our regular meeting, I'd like to invite you to the city's fourth redistricting hearing, where we will be reviewing draft maps, demographics for each submitted map, and select the city's next district election map. The meeting will be held on Saturday, January 22nd at 10:30 a.m. at the El Cajon Valley High School, which is at 1035 East Madison Avenue in El Cajon. And if you forget that, you can go to the city's website and they will have all that posted. We have no presentations on today's agenda. And so that brings me to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
Council members? We are now consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent?
No, sir.
We have no speaker card.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're now at public comment. This time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the city council. Housing Authority successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, sir. We have one speaker, Suzanne Hansen.
Please come up. Hi. Yeah, I see you again.
Here.
Ma'am, you might want to pull that microphone down so we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Suzanne Hansen, and I'm in favor of mask mandates. As a molecular geneticist, I know the ins and outs of viral transmission, and especially about the evolution of variants. We have a highly transmissible variant, Omicron, that produces a less lethal disease. But what you need to understand is that the more people infected, regardless of asymptomatic or mildly ill, the more likely a variant will evolve that is both transmissible and deadly. My second point is that the virus can be stopped by vaccination and masks. The viral particles at the microscopic level are transmitted by coughing, laughing, talking, and even just breathing. It has been demonstrated over and over again that a mask stops the form of transmission and prevents the generation of new, more lethal variants. Finally, as Christians, it is an important tenet of the faith to care for others and protect them. Masks serve two purposes. One is to protect the person wearing the mask, but just as important, the other is to protect your spouse, your parents, your children, and your fellow man. It is the Christian thing to do, and it is the rational thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Now I just go?
You can, unless you have more to say.
No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, that's the end of the public comment. All right, there are no written communications on and no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 3 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 9 is regarding the Veterans Memorial location. And staff, would you please tell us about this? How you doing, Frank?
I'm all right here.
Nice to see you again.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me today. I'm going to do a brief presentation on the Veterans Memorial location and then potential future locations. So at the September 9, 2021 council meeting, staff were directed to identify the current location and then also potentially identify other locations. What we have currently, and I scanned in the image of the plaque that we have from the November 11, 2000 dedication of what you have as the obelisk out there right now that has the 5 groups of the Department of Defense, so Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard. This was working in conjunction with the American Legion Post 303 that actually put that obelisk in and with the flagpole. And then later on, several years later, the City Council directed staff to install a larger flagpole that also included the POW MIA flag. This was spurred by a community member and also a member of the American Legion Post 303, Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, if you recall, was also an executive officer on the USS Indianapolis that was captured by North Korea, and he was a POW of North Korea for a significant period of time during the Vietnam War. So a lot of this was spurred by him, but also City Council then wanting to honor the POW MIA, the flag with that, so that's why that larger flag was installed in 2016. If you'll see, Fire Chief Swaney was part of that ceremony. I made sure to include him in there. Then we after talking with some veteran community members, especially leaders within the American Legion Post 303, to make sure we had some informal input from them as part of this, as well as having other community members that wanted to look at potential sites. This is one of the 2 sites that we identified. This is at the south end of the Prescott Promenade, where if you look at one site that was originally started looking at was the north end by the Prescott Promenade side on the Main Street side. The problem with that site is if you put up a barrier, you would maybe have like, in crime prevention through environmental design, they would call like a hiding place or an ambush point, whereas the south end here, you have an automatic knoll built in, so you wouldn't necessarily have that immediate shall we say, an immediate advantage for someone to ambush somebody at that south end site. So if you put in a memorial here, it may actually be a very good thing. It may actually bring people to that part of the park, especially during events where you have concerts in the park, as well as car shows, and other community special events in that park or the Prescott Promenade, where this may be prominently featured, where people may actually come to see it as a destination location, as an opportunity there. The other site potentially would be adjacent to the public safety building. You see some of their elevated planters right there that we included. Within that, some of the trees have been removed. If we did remove any trees of the existing elevated planters, we could plant trees elsewhere within that public safety area to complement that. But this may be a natural place to also move the obelisk that is already in place, if that's what the American Legion Post 303 would like, or have something featured within that, working potentially even with a new artist for this location. The advantage of this location would be that there's already 3 flags set up, and also that it's right next to the public safety building, so there's obviously a safety deterrent, or I should say a social deviant behavior deterrent for somebody doing something nefarious to the memorial if it was located exactly right here. So staff are seeking direction from City Council on locations, possible issuance of an RFQ for assistance in designing it, and authorization to engage the community and veterans groups for additional input. So when I say veterans groups, I don't only mean the American Legion Post 303, as they have been a large partner or a collaborator with us. I also mean the folks at 136 North Chambers, so that group includes the VFW, AMVETS, Marine Corps League Detachment, and the Navy Fleet Reserve. So we want to make sure to include them so they don't feel left out as part of contributing to a memorial that would honor all veterans and their dependents. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate that. Council members, any questions? All right. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Frank, for the presentation. Was there, when you were engaging the veterans, was there a consensus with regard to a preference of location, or did they seem amicable or happy with either location?
I think in very brief conversations that I did have, especially with the American Legion Post commander and vice commander, they were happy to engage in further conversation about any potential location. They weren't specific about any potential location.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Frank, I do have a question. So I like both the sites. I'm a little concerned about the Prescott Promenade in that it's somewhat removed from the City Hall area and would have less protection. Have you thought about that as far as from protesters, homeless individuals, other groups that might congregate around the memorial, make it hard for people to use the memorial for its express purpose?
Right. I think if that was the location selected, we would definitely have to work with the artist or the designer of it to have the crime prevention through environmental design principles instilled within the design itself to ensure at least some prevention is in place with that. So we would have natural surveillance, some monitoring, maybe mechanical monitoring with video cameras nearby to deter those type of behaviors.
So would you agree then that having it here by the public safety building might naturally be a more secure location?
I think that it lends itself to being an automatic more secure location, but time would tell for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Frank.
Yep.
Appreciate that. All right, Angela, any speaker cards?
We have no speaker cards, sir.
All right. Well, Council, we're supposed to give direction on this. I'm open to suggestion.
Yeah, I had the same concerns. I walked both those sites, and I think that one of the reasons for wanting to move or create a new Veterans Memorial was because of the current location in front of the Magnolia, where there's events happening and there's, it's essentially a party and drinking. It didn't give the memorial the respect and reverence that it was due. And my concern is that if we have that memorial in the promenade where we have parties and events and there's opportunity for graffiti and nefarious purposes, we're not accomplishing that goal of having it given that due respect and reverence that we're accomplishing. So I think the location up at the public safety building is a good one. It looks like they already have power there too. So if we wanted to do some lighting, if the artists want to do some uplighting there, you wouldn't have to run power. That's my initial thoughts. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this? Consensus then? Okay.
Graham, did you have City Manager? Did you have anything to add?
No, I think that makes sense. I think we just needed some direction on which area you wanted us to focus on. As Mr. Carson said, we'll now engage with the veterans groups and then kind of bring back some concepts. And then I think at that point we'll need to go out and hire a designer or an architect or an artist. Depending on the dollar amount we think that is, we may have to go out to an RFP. I cannot imagine the design costs would be that astronomical. But again, if the scope of this grows, we'll kind of put together what that scope would look like, some possible budget numbers with that, and then let the council make some direction at that next point. So if the council's okay with that, that's where we'll go.
Great.
Gary?
Well, I think that by the police station is clearly the safest place, and I'd be really upset if it was damaged or there's graffiti on it. And I could see that easily happening in Prescott Promenade, that on that southern portion of it. Somebody had to be out of their mind to deface it right in front of the police station. We got all sorts of cameras all around City Hall, so we'd be able to see easily who it was.
Think so, yeah. Michelle?
I like the public safety building as an option. Have we thought about maybe getting, if we're going to do, if the cost may be an issue, what about getting people to do a brick or a plaque? So you buy that, spend $100 or whatever, and put your family member, like they do up at Presidio. Or is it Soledad, Mount Soledad?
Yeah.
Buy a brick or some sort of plaque, and that would help fund some of that. Is that an option?
I think let's identify the scope and let's see what the number looks like.
Right.
Mr. Ortiz and I have already talked about maybe some fundraiser ideas.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, the brick concept, although it's a cool, fun thing, it rarely pays for itself. Just so you know.
No, I know.
But what we would do is, once we know that scope, we can bring back a whole myriad of options of how you could fund it, how you could ongoing fund it, how to honor families that want to honor their children with the brick concept. So we'll bring those all forward. But now that we have the location, we can kind of play with some of those ideas.
Cool. That my vote is for the public safety building.
All right, Graham, I think you're set, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is an update on expenditures regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. And Graham, would you please explain this to us?
Certainly. Mr. Mayor and members of council. Oh, there we go. If we can get my PowerPoint up, that'd be great. So this is, we have been doing periodic updates. It's been a while since we did one. I think the last one we did is the end of September, so we are due for one. So I just wanted to give council a quick update on where we're at with some of our expenditures with the about $30 million in ARPA money that's been allocated to various projects by the council. So really quickly, this graph is also found in your staff report, although this is a more condensed version. I've highlighted the areas that are actually already completed. So the Business License Assistance Program is done. The Foodie Fest program is done. Mitigating vaccine barriers is done. As you can see, we've spent almost $3 million on the business grant program, although that has been slowing down over the last few months. Dollar Days, the council gave us direction to run it through the end of this year or the end of 2021, which we've done. We have a little bit of money left over. Unless the council reallocates that funds, our thought was to continue to spend the money until it runs out. In terms of economic development study, you've seen, or Mr. DiMaggio has reported that we are well engaged with a consultant right now. We've allocated about $75,000 to that, and once that happens, we'll have some greater, more clear direction of where to go with how to spend the rest of the ARPA money specifically directed to economic development. Foodie Fest went over budget by about $75,000, but we had never done one of these, and so it was kind of a learning experience. That 150 was a bit of a shot in the dark, and so we learned some lessons there. And I'll break down some dollar amounts related to Foodie Fest in a second. We're moving forward on our cyber security upgrades. Like I said, the mitigating vaccine barrier program is completed, and we have about $90,000 left over from that, so that can be reallocated at some point. The battery project, the solar battery project, is about half done, and we're plugging away at expanding the broadband and fiber network. So I know Ms. Diaz gave me an update this week that we're moving forward with that. So just on the business grant program really quickly, you can see that since the end of September, 25 new businesses have applied. This is a breakdown showing sort of a time comparison and which types of businesses have been benefiting from the grant program. As the staff report indicates, we are slowing down, and there may be some value of either winding the program down or shifting the direction of the program. And staff gave a couple options of how that shift could occur in the staff report. Looking at Foodie Fest, as you can see, the majority of money spent on Foodie Fest was benefiting or enticing restaurants to come and participate in the program. $120,000 was spent, and then which was the majority of the funds. And the rest had to do with providing the entertainment. That was almost $50,000. Rental of all the pop-ups and the chairs and the electricity and the tables. And then the crafts booth was also $23,000. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the money went to. If we were to do it again, Mr. Carson went out and reached out to a lot of the businesses that participated and tried to get a determination if we were to do this again, at what price point would they be interested in participating. And actually, most of them, and I thought it was actually different when I spoke to you, Mr. Goebel. I actually said a lot would be willing to do it for a lot less money. That's actually not the case. Most indicated that $3,000 price point is what they're comfortable with. Partly, we established the precedent and the expectation. Only a few said that they would do it as low as $1,000. But if we were to do this again, we don't have to have as many businesses participating as we did this time. For example, we had 3 Subway outlets participating, and so we wouldn't have to have 3. And maybe we do it as an application and see which restaurants would provide the greatest benefit to the paying customer. So that could be another option by scaling it down if we wanted to keep the $3,000 stipend or payment to the restaurants for participating in the future. But that can be either a discussion when we get to the goal setting session or during our budget conversations. Other programs I wanted to just kind of provide a quick update on. We had set funding aside for sort of an experimental pilot program using social workers to help support police officers on calls that don't necessarily require police use of force or law enforcement forces. The county is getting ready to launch a pretty expansive program in the area, so it probably wouldn't make sense to spend money on that quite yet until we see what the county's program looks like and to see how useful or beneficial it is. On the cool zones at our rec centers, we're actually out to bid right now, and so we should be opening up bids shortly. Our entryway program, you will be seeing some capital improvement requests coming through the budget process coming up in the next few months. And then, as I indicated before, on economic development, we're really waiting to see what the study from our consultant says before we recommend any allocation of those funds in moving forward. So with that, Council, I'm here to answer any questions or receive any feedback that you have on any of the programs, but specifically looking for some direction on the business grant program to see how we want to move forward with it.
Okay.
The business grant program, I think that has run its life. I think it's been out there for, at least a year, because March 11th of last year, I think, was opening of applications, if I remember right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So we're coming up on a 1-year anniversary that people have had a chance to apply for capital expenditures for locations. And I think the employee thing is also about a year old. So my concern is staff is still spending time on this, the grants, and it's becoming a time-intensive thing. And at our goal session, we may want some things in 2022 to allow staff to move forward on. Where I'm going with this is, here's how I'm proposing that we wrap up the business grant program. I would say there's one group of people that have been left out at this point, and that is businesses that started since January 1st, 2020, because they are not eligible for the business grants. However, in the past 2 years, they have hired employees, and they've incurred the cost of hiring employees. And in some cases, existing businesses have stolen those employees, hired them away at a higher wage. An example, I was at Albertsons just before Christmas, and 2 young workers there in the produce department. One young man said, "Hey, on Monday, I'm starting down the street at In-N-Out for $17.50 an hour." And so he's leaving Albertsons to go to work at a higher wage. There's a lot of cannibalization going on of employees. And the new store, the new business, does not get reimbursed for the business grant, but the one that stole the employee got the $5,000 to help pay for it. So I would propose new businesses that started between January 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2021 may apply for funds in the next 30 days, or we could say...
I'd make it 90.
I'm open to I'm trying to give staff some chance to move on, but I'm open to the date. But a short time frame that they could apply, and then we're done with the business grant program. That's my thoughts.
Anybody else?
I like Steve's idea, and I like the 90 days from the mayor.
I'm in agreement. It's a great idea. I know that good staff is always in short supply, and if you're starting a business, that's a great idea to support them. I don't think so. We have currently about $2 million left over. We're not even going to scratch the surface, in my estimation. Graham, do you think of new businesses from 2020 applying for a $15,000? Is that what we're... Steve, did you say a dollar amount, or do we have a dollar amount?
The same employee thing, but it'll be limited to employees. They wouldn't be eligible for the CapEx for the improvement. This
right,
is
just employees.
Because they lost employees after hiring them and incurred the expense and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. I can't imagine that that's going to be a lot of businesses that's going to eat into that grant money.
Well, we've had 25 businesses in the last 3 months. So, assuming we would have that same rate, which we think it's kind of slowing down, you could probably max that. We would be well within that $2 million range.
Okay.
So are you saying we would do just the $5,000
Per employee.
per employee?
The same deal as everybody else, $5,000 per employee.
Okay.
I think the city knows who they've issued business licenses to since January 1st, 2020, so the message could go out to only that audience.
Right. That's what I was thinking, is like build a spreadsheet, put it out, and say, okay.
And we could set a max either of the remaining business grant amount money or something less than that, like $1 million or something. I can't imagine.
I like that idea because there's still a lot of people who are out of work, whether it's by choice or whether they were, closed, their businesses were closed down. No, I like their idea.
Great, then. Let me see if there's any... Angela, do you have speaker cards on this item?
No cards, sir.
All right, then I'll be glad to take a motion.
Another quick question.
Or just direction.
Another quick question. Grant, so for the remainder of the funds, is this where we designate that is going to be discussed at our goal-setting session? Is that probably the most appropriate place? Because it seems like, we have another $2 million here and $100,000 here. Is that the most appropriate place to discuss?
I think it'd probably be more appropriate to identify what your goals are.
Right.
And then we can see if some of this funding could help support those goals,
okay,
rather than the money driving the goals, right? So I would recommend that. The other thing is, and if there was no other opportunities for this money, I would recommend you put all of it back into economic development opportunities, because there's always going to be the goal is a return on the investment of that money, right? That would have a long-term general fund benefit. And so I guess as a default, I would recommend staff would recommend that the council think about putting that back into economic development, sort of as the default decision. And then if there's opportunities to do this or that or the other that would qualify under ARPA, then that money could potentially be pulled out.
Right. I'd agree, yeah.
Okay. Any more direction for staff? Graham, you have everything you need?
That's very helpful, and if there's any other direction on the other projects, we're always here to answer questions or hear feedback too.
Sounds great. Good idea, Steve. All right, the last administrative report, item 11, is the Downtown El Cajon Business Partners Annual Report, and I would like to ask our city manager to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So, the city of El Cajon has a management agreement with the Downtown Partners, and the purpose of today's agenda item is to bring forward their annual report. That agreement does indicate that there's various reports that we are to receive, or the council is to receive throughout the year. So sometime around before April, there is a requirement in the agreement that they come forward and propose next year's budget. This is not what that meeting is, because we're not ready to talk about next year's budget for them. This is sort of a catch-up of some missed financial reports from previous years. There's also a requirement to come forward shortly after the end of the previous fiscal year that talks about how the money was spent, what goals were met, and that's really the purpose of this agenda item. And then there is to be a quarterly report, not to the council, but really to staff, that we would then disseminate to the city council. We have not been receiving those reports, but staff has sort of re-engaged in this area, and will be pushing to get those reports to the city council so you have a better sense of what's occurring in the downtown with the use of the assessment monies. So as part of the agenda packet, staff presented a lot of reports. As you see, you have sort of the actual annual report submitted by the Downtown Partners. There's some financial statements submitted by the partners, and then I also included as a reference point the management agreement between the city and the Downtown Partners. I did go through their finances, and I thought it'd be useful, and we'll be asking for this as part of the report in the future. But I think it's important to understand where the funding is going and where it's coming from. As you can see, last year, a little over, almost $725,000 in either assessments or miscellaneous. And in this case, miscellaneous are sponsorship funds that were presented to the Downtown Partners for activities in the downtown. Those make up the revenue sources, and you can see that the majority of funding is really going towards contracted services to either do the clean and safe, which is really ECTLC, cleaning up trash and power washing sidewalks and the promenade, security, which is to occur in the evenings, support for the car show, the Christmas tree activity, concerts in the park, and then there's also just the administrative costs of operating an organization, such as having a place to meet for office space and renting equipment and licenses and insurance. So that's really an overview of the funding. This item really is for the council to ask staff any questions or give us any feedback of direction that you would want to give us. As you know, we have as the largest assessor in the district, we do have a member of city staff that's on the board. Mr. DiMaggio serves as our board member, so he can answer any questions. I can answer any questions, and Ms. Kathy Zeman is also here representing the Downtown Partners, here to answer any questions that you may have as well. So we're available to answer any questions or receive any direction that you would like us to move in.
Questions from staff or from council?
I have a question. On the clean and safe, is there any way that can be increased so that we have more sidewalks and areas, storefronts, power washed?
so we don't control those funds,
Okay.
right? So we don't control what happens, but if that's something that the council would like to see more expenditure in, that's something that Mr. DiMaggio can take to the next board meeting and make a request that there's a greater investment in that. So that's the kind of direction that we would love to get from the city council
Okay.
during this meeting.
Because I'm hearing from constituents that we really need to do some more power washing around the city, not just downtown, but just around the city. And so I'd like to see that increase. That's just my opinion.
Steve?
How do we identify the ambassadors? Because the report says we have developed and deployed a team that cleans Monday through Friday throughout the district. The clean team has an ambassador, ... How do we identify who the ambassadors are?
I think that would be a question for Ms. Zeman because I couldn't answer that question.
I'd like to know.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
While she's coming up, I agree with Councilmember Mitchell. I think a lot of people in the public just want clean streets and safe neighborhoods. And everything kind of encompasses that, whether that's law enforcement or public works. The average citizen wants clean streets, safe neighborhoods. So downtown, I think we have some work to do in those two areas. There's a regular that camps out in front of Main Street Donuts. It's his territory. And his cart, he keeps it clean, but he's there. There's a big pile of leaves that have been ground into the concrete in front of Testo Papesto that's been there at least since Thanksgiving. And so I don't know how we identify the ambassadors who are supposed to do these things. Yesterday, I went around Prescott Promenade and submitted a service ticket through the El Cajon app. And thanks to our friends at Public Works and the police, they cleared up probably the largest impact of transient camps that I've seen in Promenade in a long time. So how do we identify these people that are doing this job, supposed to be doing this job?
So first of all, let me say that we take care of our district only. So our district is basically from Golden Corral down to Lincoln on Main Street, Douglas, the short part of Douglas, from either side of Magnolia, from Claydell down to like Sunshine or something. And then from, again, on Magnolia, from Lexington down to the freeway. And then parts of Madison are also included. Okay, it's basically business district. When you get into residential off of Park, Cypress, any of that, it's not included. So the ambassadors would be the clean and safe team, and they're the ones that clean up. They do power washing. We're trying to get them on a regular schedule. A lot of it depends on whether their power washer is working at the time. Like they went out to do the promenade today, had a problem with the power washer. They're going to be back there tomorrow to do everything. They do have some problems when they go to the promenade. Sometimes they can't always access things. People don't move for them, even when you have a power washer. So sometimes that is hard. They do try to engage with some of the people that are there, trying to get them to go with them to ECTLC. And, so they do engage that way. But those ambassadors are basically our clean and safe team that goes around.
How do we identify who they are?
They wear yellow vests, and they are usually carrying buckets and trash pickers around town. But they are always wearing the yellow, like, traffic vests, and there's usually a team of we try to get a team of 5 of them because of COVID and because of the resources of ECTLC have been kind of stretched thin. We don't always get 5 guys downtown anymore. We'll get 2 or 3 sometimes. So a lot of it is dependent on ECTLC and what their recruitment is like and how many people they have.
So I'll come back to city staff and say, my concern is the cleanliness of downtown, and how you make that happen is under your purview.
I appreciate that. We actually worked with Ms. Zeman this week on having our public works staff and our police department go help clean up some of the encampments so they could do some power washing. That's going to occur. The the encampment sweep occurred this morning and the power washing will occur tomorrow, Mr. Shute had a great idea to have Karina Hernandez go out as part of that. So she's actually committed. She went out this morning. She's going out every single day for the next 2 weeks to interact with the homeless individuals that are in the promenade to try to get them assistance in that repetitive contact. So that is an effort we're making. Another thing I'll just let council know, we think that there is an issue with quality control on how the $64,000 is being effectively utilized. And so we'll be setting up a meeting to understand what the expectation is. Again, we don't run the organization, but we contribute a majority of the funding to it. And so staff's going to take a more active role in ensuring that there's a heightened quality control to ensure that the $64,000 is going all the way and making a difference.
But my concern is that the association is paid for a management fee, so we don't want necessarily city staff to assume that management.
Absolutely, but I think it's important that we establish what the expectation is.
Of course.
As the one that holds the management agreement.
Of course. Okay, two more short items. The association currently has $738,000 in cash. And last year, you can see on the screen, there was unallocated income of about $350,000, more or less. The association might think of a big idea with that much money, that it might have a big impact on the attractiveness of downtown. We've talked about public art, we've talked about different events, but that's a lot of cash to be sitting on. And I think participants in those dues would love to see those things go to use and not stay in a bank. My last question has to do with Live Nation. I really think we're not taking advantage of Live Nation's concerts. Does the association have any kind of promotions with restaurants, with bakeries, with things that say, hey, if you show your concert ticket, it's 10% off dinner tonight? Is there any kind of that thing going on?
Okay, so first can I address your first point there, is actually that this is not, the numbers that you're seeing are all COVID numbers. These are numbers from July of 2019 to June 30th of 2020. So it was, I'm sorry, that's not right either. From 2020 to 21, there was no concerts, there were no car shows during this time. So that's why there's so much money that's there. And actually what we're doing with that money is we're putting a permanent stage. It's already been approved by the city and everything. We're putting a permanent stage in at the promenade. And so that's a big part of that money is going there. But there was no events. There was no holiday lights. There was no Haunt Fest that we gave money to. There was no America on Main. There was no concerts, no car shows. So that would have taken up a lot of that money that you see there.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, now what was the second thing?
Live Nation, what are you doing to...
So we invite Live Nation to our concerts every week. We ask them to, if they want to come up and say anything or talk. They normally don't. Paris has come a couple times and talked to our audiences to promote the Magnolia and everything. We also have lists, a complete schedule of what they have coming up that is available at our booth. Our live announcer announces all of the shows that are coming up at Live Nation. So we promote the Magnolia a lot at the concerts, and then at the car shows we have it on there. Just on our table we have their schedule and everything. As far as offering show your coupon for this or that, that would be up to the restaurants to offer some kind of discount. But I can see us offering some kind of we usually have opportunity drawings that we've suspended for last year due to COVID. But we're hoping to start the opportunity drawings up again. So I could see doing something where, you show your ticket, you get 5 opportunity drawings, or something like that.
Yeah, the concept is we've got this $8 million reinvestment doing really well, and a friend of mine who's probably a great example came down from North County. He said, I didn't even know you had this thing down there. And he went to dinner at Anthony's in La Mesa. Why didn't he go to dinner across the street?
Well, we also have Magnolia, a link to their website from our website. We have their complete schedule on our website. So we do everything that we can to promote them on the Downtown El Cajon Business Partners website, too.
Yeah. We can do better somehow. I bet somehow we can get those people to eat here. And that's what would be my encouragement, is to use that $8 million investment and the great partnership to get people to eat here. Thank you.
Okay, any other?
Actually, I agree with Michelle and Steve. Clean and safe is really important. People want a clean and safe downtown, so that's money well spent. And also facades. I know you've helped out with a lot of facades, and downtown looks way better than it looked 10 years ago.
Yes, it does.
So I thank you very much for that. We're headed in the right direction.
Definitely. If I could say one thing about the management style that we have at Downtown El Cajon Business Partners is that there is more money than pretty much any other management district that is out there that actually goes towards the benefits and towards improving the area. We spend $55,000 on our administration. Those are our administration costs because we contract out everything. We don't have FICA, we don't have payroll, we don't have all these different things to take care of. And the previous company that was doing this, they had 52 employees. We have a business office that has 2 contracted employees that work for it's like a business suite type of place. So that's what I'm most proud of with Downtown El Cajon Business Partners, is that we are putting more money back into the community than any other management district out there. We don't have a manager that makes $100,000 a year, and we spend $55,000 on administrative costs.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because your predecessor was coming to us all the time for money they couldn't keep even within their budget, and having a surplus is not a bad way to go.
Right. I'm sure that downtown, the board would be interested in helping out with things like the Veterans Memorial that you're talking about and things like that. So we do have money to put towards environmental improvements, which that would be under that category.
Kathy, how much is our surplus, or your surplus?
Well, right now it's high because we've been saving it up and we're using it on the stage. So right now we probably have, I'm thinking of like in our savings and this and that, there's probably close to a couple $100,000.
Okay.
And that's because of nothing that we didn't do anything in 2020.
Okay. Well, thanks, Kathy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me see if there's any speaker cards on this item.
No card, sir.
All right. Again, you're asking for direction, staff?
It was really an opportunity for council to ask questions and provide some direction, and that was received, so thank you.
If nobody else has anything to say, I would like to add something, staff. So I remember back in 2008, Gary was with me, when we kind of dismantled the last iteration of the organization. And unfortunately, we had to do that because they spent every single dollar that they that they brought in on staff. There was absolutely $0 being spent on clean and safe or programs or any of that. I do fear that we're going the other direction a bit right now. I'm not sure why we should have a surplus. And I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking about cutting anything, but if it were up to me, if I give my thoughts on this, I'd like to see this assessment district be a little bit more proactive and aggressive in bringing in more businesses and more people that are going to do business in the city of El Cajon. And I think that probably the best way to do that is to work with a broker real closely, and have a broker on the payroll, and have that broker judge their effectiveness by how many new franchises or businesses or restaurants or whatever they can bring in to El Cajon to make the quality of life better in El Cajon. And so it's hard when you don't have enough money, but the money's there. So that would be my direction, would be to let's break out of kind of the basic thing that an assessment district can do and see if we can imagine doing a little bit more.
I think that this surplus is kind of a big surplus, is kind of a one-time thing, because a lot of the things they did, the concerts and Haunt Fest and all these events, they pretty much had to shut down because of COVID for the last couple of years. So I've always felt we should use one-time money, or they should use, any government organization or government-funded organization should use this one-time money very carefully, like for capital improvements. And so we have an opportunity right now to use those for some sort of capital improvements or facade improvements. And I like your idea of using something that's really big, because we might not have this opportunity in 4 years or 3 years or whenever things return back to normal.
And I do want to acknowledge that things are complicated, and I know very little about your business and what's happening in your world. It's just my initial thought. Maybe it's not a tenable idea, but if there's a way to at least bring some of that into what we're doing, I think that would be a good thing for the city. Phil.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. There's outstanding restaurants that are opening up in El Cajon. They're not opening up in downtown El Cajon, which I think there's an opportunity there, because the market is there for other businesses and that are going to bring in patrons from outside of El Cajon. So I think whatever we can do to aggressively attract those businesses, like you said, is a great idea.
I'd like to agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should do whatever we can to entice companies. Let me rephrase that. Not whatever we can, but we should have some sort of enticement. We should not have any empty buildings in downtown, number one, unless someone's just now moving out and someone's moving in. But there shouldn't be any empty spaces. We need to have more businesses that are attractive to what the citizens want. There's a lot of talk. People want to see Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or vegetarian restaurants. They want to see something more out there than your Chili's or, and not that those are bad, but, let's get some more variety and more diverse type of businesses in, because we do have a very large, diverse community, and the Chaldean community has done really well in bringing in a lot of restaurants and a lot of businesses. And I'd like to see some more businesses that are more diverse, and what can we do to increase that?
Great.
Let's never rule out using the lawn area in front of the Magnolia for development. There may be a good fit there that we could provide another location for somebody to come in and use.
Yeah, I've always thought that was a good idea. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you. I hope you don't take that as criticism. I think you're doing a great job. Thanks. Okay, commission reports. There are no commission reports on today's agenda. Item 12 is my activities report. The rest are activity reports and comments from council members. Mr. Goebel?
As reported, the East County Advanced Water Purification Project probably will not have a go, no-go in February, may be pushed out to May.
Okay. Gary?
As reported.
Mr. Ortiz? Ms. Mitchell?
As reported.
Okay, then. There are no joint councilman reports and no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first readings of ordinance on today's agenda. We have 2 second readings and adoption of ordinances on today's agenda. Item 17 is for a zoning code amendment, and I'll ask our city clerk to read the title. But first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for this item?
We have no speaker card, sir.
Would you please read the ordinance? I'm sorry.
The title of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to update the city's zoning code, including adopting additional objective standards for new development."
Thanks. May we have a motion?
Move adoption.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
The second reading of an ordinance, item 18, is for an amendment to Chapter 8.24, and I'll ask the city clerk to read the title, but first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for this item?
No speaker cards.
Would you then read the title of the ordinance, please?
Yes, sir. An ordinance to amend Chapter 8.24 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to further regulate the disposal of organic waste from residential and commercial sources.
All right, may we have a motion?
Move adoption.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're now at closed session, and I'd like to ask our city attorney to recite the title and lead us into the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will be meeting in closed session to have a conference with its real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. It is involving properties with the APNs as listed on the agenda. The negotiating party is the County of San Diego. The city's negotiators are the city manager, assistant city manager, and the city attorney. Under negotiation would be price and terms.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion, then we go to the closed session. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back quickly and conclude the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and I'm going to ask our city attorney to report of the happenings of closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on one item that had to do with a conference with real property negotiators for the properties listed on the agenda. Under Government Code Section 54956.8, direction was given to the negotiators as identified on the agenda.
All right, thank you, sir. This brings us to the adjournment of the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 11th day of January 2022, which is now adjourned till Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.